The trolley problem serves as an essential gateway into the human psyche, exposing how our instincts often clash with our logical frameworks. When we are placed in a high-pressure scenario where a runaway trolley threatens 5 lives, the majority of people immediately opt for the path that results in the least amount of total harm. This reaction is deeply rooted in our desire to optimize outcomes, effectively performing a subconscious calculation of worth, where 5 lives hold more weight than one. It is a classic manifestation of a mindset that seeks to minimize suffering, reflecting a foundational urge to preserve as much collective well-being as possible within a system defined by scarce resources and tragic constraints. When we observe this preference for saving the 5, we are witnessing the raw power of consequentialist reasoning. This mode of thought focuses entirely on the end result, positing that the morality of an action is determined by the net benefit it provides to the largest number of individuals. In this view, the individual worker on the side track is not being targeted out of malice. Rather, they are the unfortunate casualty of a situation that requires a harsh, mathematical choice. By prioritizing the survival of 5 people over one, the decision-maker aims to maximize the preservation of human life, which is a logic that many find inherently defensible when faced with impossible, binary choices. However, the moment we introduce a variation to this scenario, such as the bridge dilemma, our confidence in this simple math begins to fracture. The sudden reluctance to push a person from a bridge to stop the trolley reveals that our moral compass is not purely driven by numbers. While the mathematical outcome, 5 saved versus 1 lost, remains identical to the first case, the physical nature of the intervention changes our emotional and ethical response. This shift highlights a critical tension in the human experience: the difference between allowing a tragedy to unfold and actively participating in the creation of that tragedy. This discomfort suggests that for many, there are boundaries to what can be sacrificed, even for the greater good. The act of pushing someone feels like a violation of a fundamental personal right, whereas flipping a switch feels like managing a mechanical failure. Our brains categorize these actions differently, marking the push as an act of direct aggression or murder, while the switch is perceived as a regrettable but necessary redirection of a pre-existing threat. This distinction is vital because it shows that human morality is not just about the final tally of survivors. It is also about the moral integrity of the actor and the nature of the means employed. As we peel back the layers of these reactions, we begin to see that we are not entirely consistent beings. We often pride ourselves on being logical, yet our moral intuitions are heavily influenced by proximity and direct agency. When we are removed from the physical act, we are more likely to support a decision that saves the most people, but when we are forced to get our hands dirty, we recoil. This internal conflict is what makes philosophy so challenging and so necessary. It forces us to confront the fact that our principles are often fragile, situational, and deeply influenced by our emotional responses to specific, vivid imagery. The transition from a driver to an onlooker on a bridge changes everything, not because the death toll shifts, but because our perception of culpability shifts. By being the one who must physically shove another person, we become the author of that person's death in a way that simply diverting a trolley does not. This feeling of agency creates a deep psychological barrier. It forces us to ask whether morality is truly about the aggregate of human survival, or if it is constrained by duties we owe to one another as individuals. This is the heart of the divide between viewing life as a resource to be managed and viewing life as a right to be protected. The discussion of the fat man on the bridge is not merely a thought experiment about a bizarre hypothetical. It is a profound probe into the limits of our utilitarian instincts. It challenges the idea that we can simply treat human lives as interchangeable units in a calculation. When we hesitate to use a human being as a mere instrument to save others, we are essentially acknowledging that every person possesses an intrinsic value that cannot be overridden, no matter how much good the outcome might produce. This creates a powerful tension with the initial gut-level response that saving 5 is always better than saving 1. This tension is where the most meaningful self-knowledge begins. When we find ourselves struggling to reconcile these two scenarios, we are beginning to understand the complexity of our own values. We want to be the kind of people who save the most lives, but we also want to be the kind of people who do not violate the dignity or rights of others. The fact that these two desires often contradict each other in extreme situations is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that our moral landscape is incredibly rich, demanding, and often contradictory, requiring constant reflection to navigate effectively. By examining these scenarios, we start to see that our legal and political systems are built on these exact same struggles. Every time a government makes a decision about healthcare, war, or public safety, it is grappling with the same questions we just explored. Do we protect the few or do we prioritize the many? Do we prioritize individual rights or do we prioritize collective security? These are not abstract academic problems, they are the fundamental questions that shape our world, and they require us to look past our surface-level assumptions to understand the deeper principles at play. As we move through these various dilemmas, from the trolley track to the emergency room, we see the same patterns repeating. When a doctor chooses between saving 5 patients with moderate injuries or one with a critical injury, the intuition to save the 5 is strong. But when the doctor is asked to sacrifice one healthy person to harvest their organs for 5 others, the reaction is universally negative. This shift is crucial because it highlights the concept of a categorical wrong. There are certain things we simply should not do, regardless of the potential for a positive outcome, because they violate our core understanding of what it means to be a person. The contrast between the doctor saving 5 and the doctor sacrificing 1 is the perfect illustration of why simple consequentialism can feel inadequate. If we were purely utilitarian, we might argue that the sacrifice is acceptable, but our humanity screams that it is a profound injustice. This realization is what drives us toward the study of moral philosophers who have tried to articulate these boundaries. Philosophers like Emmanuel Kant sought to establish rules that stand firm, even when the consequences might seem less than optimal, because they believed that certain actions are inherently inconsistent with the respect we owe to fellow human beings. The power of these stories lies in their ability to strip away the distractions of everyday life and force us to look directly at the trade-offs we are willing to make. When we hear the story of the healthy patient being harvested for organs, the absurdity of the situation serves to highlight the moral intuition that certain actions are simply prohibited. This is an essential lesson in political philosophy. Just because a goal is noble or beneficial, it does not mean that all methods for achieving that goal are acceptable. Our morality is defined not only by what we want to achieve but also by how we choose to achieve it. Throughout this process, we must remain aware of the risk of intellectual evasion. It is easy to conclude that there are no right answers, that everything is subjective, and that everyone should just follow their own path. However, this form of skepticism is a dangerous trap. If we decide that these questions are unanswerable, we stop engaging with the very things that define our character. The restlessness of reason, as Kant called it, is not a problem to be solved, but a condition to be embraced. It is the fuel that keeps our moral and political consciousness alive, preventing us from falling into the lethargy of apathy. Even when we feel that a conclusion is reached, the story is never truly over. Our moral principles are not static. They are tested every single day by new challenges, new technologies, and new societal pressures. What seems right today might be challenged tomorrow by change in our environment or our understanding of human needs. This is why a philosophy course is not a quest for a definitive answer, but a journey toward a deeper understanding of ourselves and our place within a larger community. It is an invitation to remain curious, to remain critical, and to remain deeply invested in the ongoing debate of what it means to live a just life. The personal risk of this journey is that it forces us to confront our own biases and inconsistencies. We might discover that our values are not as solid as we thought, or that we hold conflicting beliefs that we have never taken the time to analyze. This can be an unsettling experience, but it is also the beginning of true wisdom. When we accept that we do not have all the answers, we open ourselves up to growth, learning, and a more nuanced understanding of why other people might reach different conclusions than our own. This empathy is the foundation of a healthy, functioning society. Political philosophy also carries the risk of making us more critical of the systems we live in, which can be an uncomfortable feeling. When we look at our policies through the lens of justice and ethics, we may find them lacking, leading to frustration or a sense of alienation. But this critical eye is what enables progress. If we were satisfied with everything as it is, we would never strive to improve. The restlessness that philosophy instills is the very engine of social change, driving us to advocate for a more equitable and thoughtful world, even when the path forward is unclear. As we look ahead, we should view these philosophical arguments not as burdens, but as tools for navigating the complexities of our shared reality. Whether we are discussing individual actions in a crisis or national policies that affect millions, the core questions remain the same. What do we owe each other? How do we balance the needs of the many against the rights of the few? And what does it mean to be a responsible participant in a world where every action has consequences? These are the questions that will define the rest of our journey together, and they are well worth the effort. It is important to remember that this journey is fundamentally about us, not just about the thinkers of the past. When we read Aristotle or Mill, we are not just learning history, we are engaging in a dialogue about our own lives. We are testing our beliefs against their wisdom, and in the process, we are refining our own sense of justice. This is the ultimate goal of the work we are doing here, to ensure that our decisions are guided by deep reflection rather than blind habit or unexamined instinct. Finally, we must embrace the idea that there is no final destination in this process. Justice is a pursuit, a constant effort to align our actions with our deepest values. The fact that we have debated these issues for centuries is not a sign of futility, but a testament to their enduring importance. We are part of a long, historic conversation, and the contributions we make today will inform the future of our society. By staying engaged, by questioning our assumptions, and by remaining committed to the search for truth, we honor the importance of the questions and the value of our own humanity. Ultimately, the goal of this inquiry is to awaken our reason and challenge the comfortable narratives we tell ourselves about why we do what we do. If we can achieve that, then we have done more than just study philosophy, we have begun to live it. Whether we find ourselves in the driver's seat of a runaway trolley or standing on a bridge, the lessons we learn here will stay with us, shaping our character and our choices for years to come. The journey is difficult, yes, but it is also profoundly rewarding, and it is a privilege to embark on it with all of you. The utilitarian perspective is perhaps the most straightforward way of viewing the world, centering on the idea that actions should be judged solely by their outcomes. It suggests that if we can create the greatest amount of happiness or prevent the greatest amount of suffering, we are acting morally. This approach has a certain elegance to it, as it provides a clear, actionable guide for decision-making. However, as we have seen, this simplicity can mask deep ethical quandaries. When we apply this logic to human lives, we are forced to treat individuals as part of a larger equation, a process that can feel deeply dehumanizing even when the intention is to do good. Jeremy Bentham, the father of modern utilitarianism, believed that human nature was governed by two sovereign masters, pain and pleasure. From this starting point, he developed a system where morality was a matter of maximizing the latter and minimizing the former. This is a powerful secular framework that has influenced everything from public policy to economics. It encourages us to look at the big picture and avoid being distracted by sentimentality. But in doing so, it often ignores the intrinsic value of the individual, treating them as a mere vessel for potential utility rather than a person with inherent, inalienable rights. When a utilitarian evaluates the trolley problem, the choice is simple. 5 lives are mathematically more valuable than one, therefore, switching the track is the morally superior action. There is no ambiguity, no moral injury, and no hesitation. The focus is entirely on the state of the world after the action is taken. This clarity is comforting, but it leaves many people feeling that something important has been missed. It fails to account for the moral weight of the decision-maker's actions or the rights of the one person being sacrificed against their will. The tension between this utilitarian outcome and our internal sense of justice is exactly what Immanuel Kant sought to address. Kant argued that human beings have a dignity that transcends any calculation of utility. He believed that there are categorical imperatives, moral rules that are absolute and must be followed regardless of the consequences. For Kant, you cannot treat a person merely as a means to an end. You must treat them as an end in themselves. This shift is profound, moving the focus from the results of an action to the nature of the action itself. From a Kantian perspective, pushing a person off a bridge is wrong, not because it saves fewer people, but because it violates the fundamental rule against using another human being as an object. This categorical prohibition creates a firm boundary that a utilitarian calculation cannot cross. It protects the individual from being sacrificed for the collective, preserving a sense of human rights that is independent of any calculation of benefit. This is a vital counterweight to the utilitarian focus, ensuring that we do not lose our humanity in the pursuit of efficiency. However, the Kantian approach also has its own challenges. If we refuse to act because of a strict moral rule, we may end up in a situation where 5 people die when they could have been saved. Is it truly more moral to maintain one's own integrity while allowing a greater tragedy to occur? This is the paradox that haunts those who hold to categorical duties. It forces them to defend the idea that there are things we must not do, even if the price of that refusal is an outcome that we would otherwise consider catastrophic. These two modes of thought represent the primary tension in modern ethical life. We live in a world that constantly asks us to balance the interests of the community against the rights of the individual. Our laws reflect this tension. They are designed to protect individual liberties while also promoting the general welfare. As we analyze these problems, we are essentially performing a balancing act, trying to find a synthesis that respects both the importance of the result and the necessity of acting in a way that is consistent with our values. Consider the case of public health, where the tension between utilitarian goals and individual rights is particularly sharp. Should a government mandate vaccinations for the sake of the collective, even if it infringes on personal autonomy? A utilitarian might argue that the benefit to the entire population outweighs the individual's right to choose. A proponent of individual rights, however, might argue that bodily autonomy is a categorical right that cannot be overridden by any calculation of benefit. This is not a conflict that can be easily settled, as it touches on the very definition of what it means to be a free individual in a society. The debate is even more complex when we consider the global stage, where the interests of different nations often collide. What is the right thing to do when the prosperity of one country comes at the cost of another's development? Is it enough to simply calculate the total global benefit, or do we have a duty to ensure that no one is treated as a means to an end? These are the questions that will define the politics of the future, and they demonstrate why understanding the difference between consequentialism and categorical ethics is so crucial for any responsible citizen. As we continue to examine these frameworks, we must also look at how they manifest in our daily interactions. We all make small utilitarian calculations every day. Should I spend my time helping one person, or should I focus on a project that benefits many? This is a form of moral reasoning that is embedded in our ordinary lives. By becoming more conscious of the principles we are using, we can make more informed and thoughtful decisions, ensuring that our actions align with our goals and our values. The study of these ethical systems is not just an academic exercise, it is an investigation into the foundations of human conduct. By understanding the arguments for utilitarianism and Kantianism, we can develop a more sophisticated moral vocabulary. We can move beyond simple, knee-jerk reactions and begin to engage in a more nuanced, deliberate approach to the dilemmas we face. This is the mark of a mature, reflective mind that is ready to grapple with the complexities of the human experience. It is also important to acknowledge that neither system is perfect on its own. A life led solely by utilitarian calculations risks losing its moral anchor, while a life led solely by rigid, categorical rules can become unfeeling and detached from the realities of human suffering. The most effective moral life is likely found in the tension between these two poles, using utilitarianism to guide our broad efforts at doing good, while using categorical rights to set boundaries that protect the dignity of every person. As we move through the upcoming units, we will have the opportunity to see these systems in action in the real world. We will look at contemporary controversies, from the ethics of war to the challenges of economic inequality, and we will see how these philosophical ideas offer a way to clarify our thinking and our arguments. We will learn that the best way to debate is not by shouting, but by articulating our underlying principles and being willing to listen to the reasons offered by others. This process is not always easy. It requires us to be vulnerable, to admit when we are wrong, and to be willing to change our minds when presented with compelling arguments. That is the essence of intellectual honesty. It is a quality that is in short supply in much of today's discourse, but it is exactly what this course aims to cultivate. When we approach these issues with a commitment to learning and reflection, we become better at navigating the disagreements that are an inevitable part of living in a diverse and pluralistic society. The role of the educator in this process is to act as a guide, not a judge. The goal is to provide the tools for thinking, not to hand out a set of answers. By presenting these dilemmas and these philosophies, the aim is to create a space where ideas can be tested, challenged, and refined. This is the spirit of the Socratic method, which has served as the foundation for critical inquiry for thousands of years. It is a tradition that we are proud to continue here in this space. When we discuss the fat man on the bridge or the organ transplant scenario, we are not trying to reach a consensus on whether these actions are right. We are trying to understand why we find them so difficult to judge. By articulating the reasons for our discomfort, we are revealing the values that we hold most dear. This is the true work of philosophy, using the strange and the hypothetical to illuminate the familiar and the vital. We should also be aware that the study of philosophy can change how we see our political obligations. If we recognize that certain rights are categorical, we may feel a stronger obligation to defend them, even in the face of intense political pressure. If we recognize the power of utilitarianism, we may feel a greater sense of responsibility to ensure that our public policies are genuinely focused on the well-being of the greatest number. This is how philosophy can shape us into more active, more engaged, and more conscientious citizens. The risk of becoming a worse citizen, the risk Callicles warned Socrates about, is real if we treat philosophy as a way to withdraw from the world or to become cynical about the possibility of progress. But if we treat it as a way to better understand the world, then it is an invaluable asset. It allows us to participate in public life with a clearer sense of purpose and a deeper commitment to the common good. That is the path we are choosing to take. Finally, we must never lose sight of the fact that these dilemmas involve human beings, not just theoretical units. The people in these stories are metaphors for our neighbors, our friends, and our fellow citizens. Their suffering is a reminder of the real-world stakes of our moral choices. By keeping this human element at the center of our thinking, we can ensure that our ethical framework remains grounded, compassionate, and truly deeply human. The search for justice is a lifelong commitment that requires us to constantly reevaluate our positions in light of new information and new challenges. It is not something we can settle once and for all and then set aside. Instead, it is an active practice of reflection and dialogue. As we have seen through the various trolley problems and medical dilemmas, our moral landscape is complex, filled with competing values that often pull us in different directions. This is why skepticism is such an easy resting place. It allows us to stop worrying about these hard questions. But as we have learned, skepticism is not a home, it is only a momentary pause. The fact that these questions are difficult is exactly why they matter. If justice were easy, it wouldn't be worth the effort. It is the challenge of finding a path through the conflicting demands of utility and duty that makes the pursuit of justice so vital. When we engage in this work, we are not just looking for answers, we are training our minds to think more deeply, more carefully, and more empathetically about the world we inhabit. This is the true value of the education we are undertaking. As we look at the history of moral philosophy, we see a long line of thinkers who have struggled with these same questions. Aristotle, Locke, Kant, and Mill were not just writing books, they were responding to the political and social issues of their time. They were trying to build systems of thought that could help them navigate the challenges they faced. We are doing the same thing. We are reading their work to see how their insights can help us understand our own problems, and in the process, we are adding our own voices to the conversation. This is why we focus on contemporary controversies like free speech and inequality. These issues are the testing ground for our principles. When we debate affirmative action or same-sex marriage, we are not just talking about politics, we are talking about what we believe a fair society should look like. We are testing our moral frameworks against the reality of the people whose lives are affected by these policies. This is where philosophy meets the real world, and where it has the potential to make a meaningful difference. The process of bringing our principles and our judgments into alignment is a difficult ongoing task. Often we find that our principles are in conflict with our gut feelings, or that our gut feelings are inconsistent across different scenarios. This is not a failure, it is an opportunity. It is the moment when we are pushed to refine our thinking and to seek out a deeper, more consistent understanding of what we truly value. This is the work of intellectual growth. Throughout this course, we will encounter arguments that we find persuasive and arguments that we find deeply troubling. That is exactly what should happen. The goal is not to convince everyone to agree on one set of principles. The goal is to develop a common language for debate and a common commitment to the search for justice. Even when we disagree on the conclusions, we can agree on the importance of the questions and the necessity of looking for answers that are rooted in reason and evidence. The risk of self-knowledge is that once we understand the factors that shape our moral views, we can never look at them in the same way again. We lose the innocence of assuming that our values are simply the truth, and instead see them as part of a complex process of reflection. This can be unsettling, but it is also the key to becoming a more open-minded and thoughtful person. It is a sign of maturity that we can acknowledge the validity of different perspectives even while holding firmly to our own. As we continue, we must remember that this conversation is not limited to this room or this time. We are participating in a tradition that spans centuries. We are adding our own reflections to a body of work that has shaped the modern world. This is a responsibility we should take seriously. By being careful with our language, by listening to one another with respect, and by being willing to change our minds, we are contributing to the health of our intellectual culture. The role of a good citizen in this context is to be a bridge builder, someone who can help others see the complexity of the issues we face. By articulating our values clearly and listening to the values of others, we can foster a spirit of collaboration rather than confrontation. This is the best way to handle the inevitable disagreements that arise in any society. It is about building a community where we can disagree without being disagreeable, and where we can work together to build a more just world. The idea that political philosophy makes us worse citizens by distancing us from the consensus is a challenge to be met head-on. We can choose to use that distance not to withdraw but to see more clearly. When we are not trapped in the immediate emotional reaction to a political controversy, we can analyze the deeper issues at play. This is a skill that is desperately needed in our political discourse, where sound bites and slogans often drown out serious reflection. We are, in effect, building a toolkit for engagement. Every story we hear, every philosopher we study, and every debate we hold is adding a new tool to that kit. We are learning how to break down complex issues, how to identify the principles at stake, and how to construct arguments that are both intellectually rigorous and morally compassionate. This is a toolkit that will serve us well for the rest of our lives. The restlessness of reason is our constant companion. It is the feeling that there is always more to learn, more to understand, and more to do. It is the opposite of complacency. If we can maintain that sense of restlessness, we will never stop growing, and we will never stop seeking to improve ourselves and our society. That is the greatest gift of a philosophical education. It is also important to remind ourselves that we are not acting in a vacuum. Our choices have real-world consequences for real people. This is why we must never lose sight of the human cost of the policies we advocate for. We must always be asking, who does this benefit? Who does this burden? Is this consistent with the dignity of every person involved? These questions are the heartbeat of a just society. As we reach the conclusion of this part of our journey, let us reflect on what we have accomplished. We have moved from simple trolley problems to the foundational principles of justice and human rights. We have seen how our own intuitions can be both a source of wisdom and a source of bias. And we have committed ourselves to a process of continuous learning and growth. That is a solid foundation for everything that is to come. The road ahead will be challenging, but it will also be full of discovery. We will look at more complex texts, more contentious issues, and more diverse perspectives. We will continue to test our beliefs and refine our arguments. And we will continue to do it together as a community of learners committed to the search for justice. Let us carry with us the spirit of humility that comes from knowing how much we have yet to learn. Let us carry with us the courage to challenge our own assumptions, even when it is uncomfortable. And let us carry with us the commitment to use our reason to build a world that is more thoughtful, more equitable, and more just for everyone. The work is far from finished. In fact, it is only just beginning. As we delve into the works of the great thinkers, let us treat them not as static authorities but as fellow travelers who can help us see our own lives more clearly. They have much to teach us, and we have much to contribute to the ongoing conversation about what it means to live well together. This journey is a privilege, and it is one that we share as fellow human beings. Let us make the most of it. By keeping our minds open and our hearts committed to the common good, we can ensure that our time here is well spent and that we leave better equipped to contribute to the world around us. The final lesson of this inquiry is that the most important questions are the ones that don't have easy answers. They are the ones that define us, that challenge us, and that keep us moving forward. They are the questions that make life worth living, and they are the questions that we will continue to explore together, step by step, as we strive to understand what justice really means in our time. Thank you for your dedication to this pursuit. It is your engagement, your thoughtful questions, and your commitment to reflection that make this enterprise possible. We are only at the beginning, but already the path ahead is clear. We will keep the conversation going, we will keep the restlessness of reason alive, and we will continue to seek the light of understanding in an often dark and complicated world.